But I also wanted to see what's Trump saying about all this. And so here's a few of his recent comments. He came out of the courtroom today and just truthed kangaroo court in all caps. So, confident, obviously confident in the outcome. He had, after leaving court yesterday for the final time, he called the judge a tyrant and the trial a disaster. Now, you could say that the trial was a bit of a disaster in that his witness did end up with the courtroom being cleared of media and all that. Like that was kind of a disaster, but that's not on the prosecution. That's one of only 2 witnesses that you decided to call. He lodged 2 mistrial motions with the judge. Those have been shot down. I think there's one that's still outstanding, but it doesn't look like that's going to work. And so we're gonna have a day, probably, maybe a little bit longer of final arguments. I imagine it will be just Tuesday because Monday is a holiday. And then they're gonna start to consider. I don't know if there's expectations or predictions about how long the jury will be deliberating. It is possible that if they really get hung up, it maybe could take a while. But what's your gut saying? You think they're gonna get him? Did they prove the underlying crime that was being covered up? Do you think, is it gonna be parole? If they get him, will it actually be prison? What do you think?
I mean, I don't here's the thing, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, but I don't think that Donald Trump is ever going to go to prison. I don't think that it matters what he does. Do I think that this jury will convict him? I hope that they do, but every time that we think that we're close to Donald Trump facing some type of accountability and facing responsibility for his actions, he doesn't, right? Like, the $500 million that he was going to have to pay out to New York City was going to probably bankrupt him. And of course, he found a way to weasel out of that. So, I mean, anything is possible in the Trump world that we're living in. So I'd like to think that these jurors, if the prosecution lays out, final, does the season finale with this case and wraps it up neatly, that folks will get the picture of what it was that he did, and why he's here and why he needs to be held accountable. But we'll see.
Hey, I'm glad you're here. Listen, in order for the Damage Report to keep on going, we need viewers like you to become a member on YouTube. Can you click the join button on YouTube today? Thank you. My final comment that I want to make on this is there's a list 10,000 entries long of things that I will never understand how it does not bother Donald Trump's base. And there's a lot of stuff that bothers me about Trump that doesn't merit being on that list. I'm saying even for them, like Trump paying to cover up these affairs is not really that much of a crime against me as a lib or whatever. I was never gonna vote for him anyway. So me knowing or me not knowing has no effect. It's against his own base and some independents too, but mostly his base. And he did it. He paid, not just one woman, he paid multiple women to cover all this stuff up. And they sent Michael Cohen to go threaten them and all that. Why doesn't it bother them that he was dishing, like the populist guy was dishing out huge sums of cash to make sure they didn't find out who he was? Like if I don't know if there's like someone that you have a lot of admiration for or something like that. Like imagine if you found out that they had paid huge sums of money so that you wouldn't find out who they really were. I like to imagine you would be bothered by that. But for some reason on the right, they're just immune to all of these considerations. It's not just the Access Hollywood tape. You can put that in a pile, 10,000 things big of things that they have apologized for, and I will never understand that. Any thoughts?
I really, the funny thing is that, John, I don't think that they just admire Donald Trump, right? Like I think that they want to be Donald Trump. And so what that means is having the ability, the power, the wealth, to be able to be your worst self, right? Yeah. And that's what it is that he gives them the courage to do, is to be and embody their worst selves, right? Like they don't have to worry about political correctness. They don't have to worry about the changing society and standards and ideas, right? It's just about throwing things back to the 1950s and being able to do and say whatever the hell you want. And so for them, when they see this, they're like, that's power. That's what a strong man would do. I would do the same thing. It isn't embarrassing to them. And even to the white evangelical Christians, right? Who you're like, man, we're talking about porn stars, and you see Speaker Mike Johnson going over there with his red tie. They just say, God gives us different tools. Like that's their justification. Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah, and the hypocrisy is crazy. Like, I have to imagine when Mike Johnson went to the trial, did his son get a text message about it? Like, he got that automatic porn notification thing. Like, I don't know, a little bit hypocritical there, Mike Johnson. Anyway, but as you said, we will very quickly know. The trial honestly flew by. I cannot believe that we're more than a month into this. So hopefully within a few weeks, we will know. And then maybe in 10 or 20 years, we'll find out what happened in all of the other cases when the Supreme Court or Eileen Cannon finally allows us to. Thanks for watching our video. Did you know that you can support our show by becoming a subscriber? Just click the subscribe button and also ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're live or when we post new content.